Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Town of Los Gatos Council meeting of December 2nd, 2025. Just a note about the agenda tonight. First of all, we will be taking items 17 and 18 at the next council meeting. So those have been rescheduled for then. And we will be doing the presentation from the Youth Commission, and then following that, I've had a request from the Vice Mayor to have the Youth Commission work plan follow immediately after that, and we'll open it and take public comment at that time. So could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Isto? Here. Councilmember Rennie?
Here.
Councilmember Badami?
Here.
Vice Mayor Moore?
Here.
Mayor Hudis?
Here. So with that, I'd like to invite Ben Daniel to come up and lead our Pledge of Allegiance. So come on up around here. And Ben is in the 5th grade at St. Francis Cabrini School, and he is a scout, member of PAC 334, and he enjoys football, basketball, biking, wrestling, hiking, and fishing. And we were trading tips about fishing places just before we got started. So, Ben, if you'd like, come on up here, and you can lead us in the pledge.
Please rise and face the flag. Please take your hats off, and please put your hand over. Please put your right hand over your heart. And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Round of applause. Thank you, Ben. You can say hi to each of the council members. Thank you so much for doing this. How about one more round? Okay, so tonight we are going to start with a presentation from the Youth Commission about the Youth Commission work plan. So I'm not quite sure how you're organized to do that, but you're welcome to come up to the podium and start your presentation, and then there may be some questions from council at that point. So just go ahead and introduce yourself and start your presentation. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you. Good evening, Town Council. My name is Cody, and I'm the chair of the Los Gatos Youth Commission. So I'm really excited to be here tonight with my other youth commissioners to present our 2025 to 2026 Youth Commission work plan. We have a really strong mix of new commissioners and returning commissioners this year, and we're excited to revisit our old ideas and our new ideas with a fresh set of eyes. And hopefully also introduce some goals for this year. So I'll hand it off to Vice Chair Anjali.
Thank you, Cody. Hi, Council. Good evening. My name is Anjali, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Los Gatos Youth Commission. So, like last year, we have 4 ad hocs: environmental, teen wellness, community outreach, and traffic safety. Our work plan does look a little bit different this year due to the budget restrictions. We recognize the need to be realistic and responsible with our proposals, and we spent the past several weeks refining our goals so that they remain impactful while staying within the constraints we've been given. We're eager to share those ideas with you tonight, and just as eager to hear your feedback. Your direction helps us ensure that our work aligns with the town's priorities, and we look forward to collaborating with you as we move into the year ahead. Now I'll hand it off to our 4 ad hoc leads.
I'll start us off. I'm the environmental co-lead along with Anjali, and our main goals for this year are to try and look at revisions for the current plastic straw ordinance in place in Los Gatos. So what that looks like, we believe this year a realistic goal is interviewing stakeholders, whether that's community members or business owners, and we want to try and prepare and see if we can draft a strengthened version of the ordinance, which includes a move to BPI compostable takeout plastic. And then we also want to educate the community and spread awareness about the ordinance, because there's not too many community members even know about the current single-use plastic straw ordinance. And we also are aware of a statewide plastic bag ban coming into effect in the next year, and we want to try and educate the community about that as well.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Nova Jaraj. I'm the lead for the community outreach team. So this year we're planning on participating in the Christmas parade this year, like our previous years. We have t-shirts picked out. It's pretty exciting. Then going into the spring, we're going to do Spring into Green again to kind of get our name out there and promote sustainability. And then a nice to have is we want to collaborate with the library to host a sort of multicultural event. I think it really reflects well if youth are working to promote unity in our community. So that's our goal. Yeah.
All right. Hello, Council. Good evening. I'm Saki Chinakola, and I'm the lead for the Teen Wellness subcommittee ad hoc. And so, as you know, for the past couple of years, we've had a kind of theme for this ad hoc each year. Last year was nicotine awareness. So this year, we tried to focus on a topic that's more that can impact a broader range of students. So we decided on stress management because everyone faces stress. Finals week, man, it's rough out there. So we're trying to make that better for the kids at our schools. So our first idea was to do a flyer like we've done every year. So just a quick information, you can look, see ways to improve stress, ways that stress can harm your body, and just all necessary information. And then we're also thinking of, again, doing a video to kind of just reiterate that information, maybe in a more fun or more a way that increases audience retention. And then our final thing that we decided to do this year was to create some wellness center activities at our school. So currently we have one idea, which for Earth Day, which is near finals week, all AP exams are happening at that time, everyone's kind of stressed out. We're gonna have a plant-a-plant event where basically kids can come during lunch and create their own plant, kind of to take them away from that mindset like school. So, and then also we're thinking to improve the wellness center with new activities like maybe some glitter jars you can shake, or many more. And we're still coming up with new ideas. So yeah, if you guys have any suggestions, please let us know. Otherwise, yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Eli Ashigian. I'm the traffic safety ad hoc head, and I want to talk about our work plan for this year. As you can see on the presentation, we have 3 major points. The first one is we're going to continue promoting e-bike safety in collaboration with town commissions and the police department. The second one is we're going to parse the results of the traffic safety survey that we put out in March to determine the most risky intersections near schools and create plans to address those along with the CSTC. Our third point, and the one I'd really like to discuss here, is to increase the use of public transportation in town. So we noticed from those survey results that only a handful of students at the high school are really making use of the VTA bus service, the 27 line, to get to and from school. And we also noticed that one of the biggest complaints with walkers and bikers is just in the volume and speed of traffic. So we think by increasing use of public transportation, we can get cars off the road. We can increase walkability and bikeability of the town, and that's a really, I think, good goal there. And to that end, we've created a survey that will go out to the high school and to 2 middle schools through existing channels that we created from the previous survey. And this is mostly going to discuss what is the major issue with public transportation infrastructure, why are folks not choosing to take that, be it cost or times and the schedule of the VTA, or just a lack of knowledge about the program in general. We have contingencies to address any of those topics. From one of them would have us discuss with the VTA about possibly changing their schedule to better align with high school pickup and drop-off times. For the cost eventuality, we might recommend that Town Council look into the LGHS bus pass pilot program that the CSTC proposed, I believe, earlier this year. And it could involve just informational flyers, just to get the word out that there is a bus program here that's readily usable. Anyway, we've already made some progress towards some of these goals. We've looked over the results from the traffic safety survey, and we've identified those intersections. And we've created a survey that we are about ready to send out to the town. All we need is your go-ahead. So I'm happy to take any questions or elaborate on any of those plans. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say, yeah, we have a lot of ideas, new ideas, and revisiting a lot of old ideas this year. And as you can see, kind of some of them are spanning across 2 years. So they'll give next year's Youth Commission a good base to work off of. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, we'd love to hear them. Or any suggestions.
Sure. Questions? Councilmember Risto.
Yeah, kind of a question, kind of a suggestion. I mean, first of all, these 4 areas are just wonderful. I mean, they're actually important to the whole community, but the fact that you're reaching out to youth and the community, you know, mental health awareness, we know about that. When I think about the bus program, one of the things that resonates with me is I have a 25-year-old daughter who went to Los Gatos High School, and when she got to college, you know, you do not get to class in a car ever at most campuses. There's no way. UCSB, there are no cars on campus. And so I think one of the best ways students, besides taking their AP exams, whatever, can get ready for college is to understand how to get around on a bike or walking, but most importantly, using public transit. And she was one of the only students on her dorm floor that knew how to use a mapping app and figure out when the bus was coming and how to ride it. And, you know, most students are going to go to universities where every option except a car is the way to go. So I think promoting it as college readiness or being prepared to move into other areas would be one approach. But I really applaud your efforts on this because we do have a bus that runs right in front of the high school, and it goes right along areas where we have high density, not high density, but it goes along areas where a lot of residents abut to. So thank you for those efforts.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think Eli mentioned we're preparing a Google form for kind of a survey for why Los Gatos High students specifically aren't using buses, even though there are these existing lines, and we're hoping to use that to help kind of address or promote public transport.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So I think I've talked with some of y'all about this. I think I know the answer, but just to ask it now. First of all, fantastic job. Super impressed with everything that y'all are doing. Agree with everything that Councilman Baristo just said. On the environmental ad hoc, one of the ideas that I've heard you all talk about, you just talked about, and we've gone back and forth a little bit on, is the idea of implementing and educating on the plastic bag ban. But that's not explicitly called out in your work plan right now. Would you be open to adding that as one of your work plan items?
Absolutely, yeah. We'll make that revision, I think, and we'll add that to
Okay, great.
that outreach.
Thank you.
So I just had a sort of a comment and a question. I was very pleased to see the inclusion and consideration of a multicultural event. You know, in this town, we do have a lot of cultures, but people often only experience their home culture. And if you don't experience someone else's culture, you're not going to be open to it. And so I think this is a very tangible way to bring our community together over diverse and shared cultural experiences. And so I'm very enthusiastic about it. And I recommend that this work be discussed with the DEI Commission. I know you have a liaison to that commission as an example of a really tangible action that can be done. Now, it's going to take some planning. It's going to take some funding, and it's going to require probably some sponsors and things like that. But I think it's terrific that that's included in the work plan. I think it can really make a difference in our town. And so I just want to compliment you on that. And thank you all for the terrific job on the work plan and seeing how it's evolved and your engagement, and also to support from our police department for facilitating this work and considering it to be a 2-year work plan, I think is really a good step forward as well. We might want to think about that for some other commissions. So, but thank you. Yeah, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to add some comments. So, again, I think you've just done a fantastic job. I'm super impressed with everything you're doing. I think I've shared in the past, when I was in high school 10 years ago, I didn't know the Los Gatos Youth Commission existed. I was not doing anything that was particularly productive with my time. So kudos to you all for doing that. A few, specific things I would just comment on traffic safety, the recommendations on increasing VTA ridership, specifically working with Complete Streets on the bus pilot program, I think is a fantastic idea. I think that's great. I think a big part of making something like that successful is buy-in from the students at the high school. So I think that's great, and I'll be really curious to see the results of that survey. The other thing I would say on traffic safety is e-bike safety, same exact thing. We're, as the town of Los Gatos, trying to do what we can to increase e-bike and e-motorcycle awareness, safety, but having students adopt that is a whole different story, and so getting some buy-in from students at the high schools, I think, is going to be really valuable. On the environmental, I said on the plastic bag ban, I think that's great. I also love your idea of modifying the plastic straw ordinance to go a little bit further. I think that's great. And then the last two on teen wellness, I love your idea of partnerships with canine companions. Plant a tree sounds great. And I love the idea of partnering with the wellness centers more. I think those are spaces that have been very well utilized at schools, but are do better when they have are led by students. And lastly, on community outreach, I would double down on everything the mayor said about a multicultural event. I think you working with the DEI Commission is a really, really good idea on that. That's actually something I've heard the mayor and others talk about since the creation of the DEI Commission. So I think it being in your work plan could give it some legs and help it actually move forward. And you always do a fantastic job at all of our legacy events. I love whenever the Youth Commission participates in any town event. So keep going. You all rock. Can't wait to see what you do.
Thank you. We're looking forward to this year as well.
Okay, thank you. No other comments, and I'll close the presentation. And if it's okay with the council, I'd like to move item 12 out of consent to consider that now. That's the work plan for the Youth Commission. And so I'll start with public comment on that item. Would anyone like to comment on item 12? Okay. Any further comments from the council, or suggestions or a motion? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for hearing this out of order. So, yeah, I've heard the commission talk about it, and I think there's a willingness to add this. I think it would probably be part of their work regardless, but I'd like to explicitly call out in their work plan the implementation of the 2026 statewide plastic bag ban. And I can suggest some language, but how I see that is, helping educate residents about the plastic bag ban. I think very few people actually know that that's coming, and then also recognizing the businesses, or at least communicating with the businesses that comply with that. As I've shared to the Youth Commission environmental ad hoc in the past, there are businesses in Los Gatos that still sell styrofoam, and so it really, I think, is much more. It's great that this has gone into place at the state level, but it's success on this really comes down to implementation. So I'd like to see them support the town of Los Gatos' implementation of the statewide plastic bag ban.
Any other suggestions to the work plan? A motion, maybe? Councilmember Badami.
I just have a comment. You guys do terrific work, but maybe just a little housekeeping. When I compare your chart here with our staff report, and kudos with the multicultural events, but I don't believe we call it a Christmas parade anymore. It's a children's holiday parade. The staff report has it that way, but just to keep things, on par, you might want to change that. Otherwise, it's great. It's great. So thank you for all the work you do.
Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I just wanted to also comment. Well, first of all, I'll make a motion to adopt. We have the no. Did you make the motion? I'll make the motion to adopt the work plan with the suggestion put out by the Vice Mayor. I do think that the education part, you have a large commission, you're well organized, you are in the community. To me, it's devastating that we went backward on the plastic bag ban because Los Gatos was a leader, and I think it was through a prior youth commission that we had a plastic bag ban that was kind of undone by the pandemic. And so we're finally getting back to where we should be. And I think that re-education, especially to people that either forgot or didn't know about it the first time, is super helpful. I also appreciate how well you work with the police department and how focused and disciplined this plan is, because while it touches a lot of areas, it's all achievable. And I think in a 2-year plan, you will have the satisfaction of moving the needle on the environment, on mental health, on traffic, on community outreach. And so I think that's exciting too, because it's one thing to set up a bunch of goals, but if you don't achieve them, it kind of feels like you're spinning your wheels. And I know that you're all very goal-oriented people, high achievers, and so I'm excited to see all this happen.
We have a motion. We have a second. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, second, and I'll just add I'll share the suggested language, which is support the town of Los Gatos' implementation of the 2026 statewide plastic bag ban through educating residents and recognizing businesses that comply with the new law.
That's okay with the maker?
Absolutely.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. And I just wanted to add a comment. We did make a change to youth commissioners' participation in various commissions, but in being advised that you can't be voting members, but you can be engaged and vocal members, and we want you to stay up here on the dais and participate with those commissions. And so I would just encourage you to stay engaged as liaisons. It's very important. 2 ways. One is the commissions need to hear what young people need, but also it's important to carry the message back to our young population about some of the things that are going on from a town government perspective that might impact them. So it's really 2-way. So it's a change, but stay engaged. So thank you. With that, I will close this item, and we will now move back to the consent calendar. And let me just see one thing here. So let's close out the rest of the consent calendar. Any comments? I have one comment on the consent, Lee Quintana. And not sure which item this is, but it's about the CEQA consultants. Don't want to speak? Okay. Item 8, I see it. Yep.
Thank you. Clarification on, there are 3 different consultant firms that are being suggested. My clarification question is, how will projects be assigned to the different firms?
Great, thanks for the question. We can take that after we close public comment. We don't have any other commenters on the consent items. Is there anyone online who wishes to speak on consent?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. So I would ask staff about Ms. Quintana's question. With 3 consultants, how do we select which one for a particular project? Or does the applicant select?
Understanding currently is that the applicant selects of the 3 candidates, but that's something that's under review by the town manager's office. And many other cities, it is staff that select the consultant who prepares the consultant report for an application project. And the applicant pays for and then indemnifies the town for the delivery of that product.
But the town ultimately is responsible for that report, correct?
It ultimately is our responsibility to complete it, but its payment is done by the developer.
Right. And so I would imagine there's some different skill sets between the different consulting firms.
There's a lot that goes into it, in addition to workload, and pricing may be different also. However, the important part of what our role is as the town is to ensure that the best consultant that can get the project done performs that project.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other questions on the consent items? Councilmember Risto.
If I may, I'd like to ask a follow-up question to the mayors, and that is, for this item, how we pick the consultant is not under consideration, correct? This is something that will come forward to us, or you'll be working through?
This is strictly to add a 3rd one to the mix of the 3. The selection of a consultant is not coming before the council.
Okay, perfect. I want to understand that. Okay, thank you. And then if I may, I'll make a motion. I move to approve items 1 through 11 and 13 through 16.
Vice Mayor?
I'll second. I just have a quick comment on item 15, which is that I'm glad to see us funding this project. And just for staff's information, in the upcoming CIP, I'm interested in continuing to fund this project.
Okay, further comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Okay, so now we move to verbal communications. And let's see, I have a couple of cards here. Actually, I have a few cards here. First one is Sudana Belor. And if I pronounced it wrong, please correct me.
Hello, esteemed council members. My name is Siddhanva, and I am a leader of the Indigenous Justice Coalition, as well as a lead intern for the Muwekma Ohlone tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm here today to discuss the possibility of a letter of support for the tribe in their ongoing fight for federal recognition. For decades, the Muwekma have been wrongfully denied equal protection under the law because of political red tape and special interests. But if the Muwekma find supports in local governments like the Los Gatos Town Council, cities who stand on the homeland of the Muwekma people, then they can ensure that the government listens and eventually grants them those rights through federal recognition. I personally am not Indigenous or part of the tribe, but I think that's precisely why I need to be here today. It takes the community banding together to make change for the Muwekma people and for our society. It's not enough for the people in the Muwekma to advocate for themselves, nor is it enough for us to advocate for them alone. I stand by the belief that we as the Bay Area community must come together to correct this social injustice. But that's why a letter of support is so important, because showing Congress that the Muwekma have the Bay Area behind them is the first step towards justice. I strongly urge you to consider writing a letter of support for the tribe, and I'd love to discuss this further with you after the meeting concludes. Thank you.
Thank you. Parker Huynh, and then Ray He.
Hello, distinguished council members. My name is Parker, and I'm one of the interns at the Indigenous Justice Coalition, working with the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. Like my fellow interns before me, I'm here today to request a letter from the city supporting the tribe's fight for federal recognition. I wanted to take the time to answer your concerns you may have about writing a letter of support. Now, throughout dozens of meetings we had with politicians on the local, state, and federal level, their concerns boil down to two key points. One, they're simply unaware of the tribe's legal standing, and two, they don't want to get involved with a situation seemingly mired in political red tape and bias. But, put simply, the facts line up in the tribe's favor. The Bureau of Indian Affairs has found that at least 99% of current Muwekma tribal members descend from the previously recognized tribe of the Verona Band of Alameda County, and that status was never terminated by an act of Congress. The data clearly shows that the Muwekma have always been here. And, most importantly, a federal judge ruled in 2022 that the tribe retains its sovereign immunity and that it was wrongfully excluded from the BIA's list of recognized tribes. The city issuing a letter of support won't magically grant the tribe its rightful status, nor will it prevent any other tribes from seeking the same. We're not asking Los Gatos to make a legal determination. We're asking Los Gatos to stand with the evidence, with the universities that verified it, and with the courts that affirmed it. Support of recognition is not a question of proof, it is a question of political will. Thank you.
Thank you. Gavin Chang. Oh, I'm sorry, Ray He and then Gavin Chang.
Hello, council members. My name is Ray He, and I'm also here as a student advocate supporting the Muwekma-only tribe. Across the Bay Area, students who support the Muwekma are being given their first real introduction to local politics. For us, the decisions made in this council are the first that we can see are directly affecting people's lives. That's why supporting the Muwekma-Ohlone tribes fight for federal recognition matters. For my generation, this is not just a political or academic issue. It's a matter of justice and trust. The choices made by leaders today will shape how we view politics when we begin voting in the next election. When we as the youth see that city councils are finally taking a stance and righting the historical wrong done against the tribe, we know that the politicians we vote for are those that really listen to us. From Union City to Livermore, cities across the state have already pledged their support. Los Gatos wouldn't be standing alone. It will be joining a coalition of justice, a momentum that we hope can make its way to Congress and finally serve the Muwekma. We hope that you consider writing a letter of support. Thank you.
Thank you. Gavin Chang. And that's the last card I have. So if there's anyone else who wants to speak on verbal, or if there is anyone online, we'll take them after this. Go ahead.
All right, good evening, councilors. My name is Gavin, and I'm here supporting the Muwekma-Ohlone tribe in their fight for federal recognition. I wanted to talk specifically about the tribe's connections to Los Gatos. Not only does the town rest on Muwekma's ancestral homelands, but it continues to be a vital part of the tribe's culture and heritage. Research conducted by UC Berkeley, Stanford, and Santa Clara University all confirm Aboriginal ties to Santa Clara County, including here in Los Gatos. New Museum Los Gatos, a local nonprofit and history museum, has also consistently produced exhibitions in partnership with the Muwekma, affirming their local roots and showcasing their history. The Muwekma has furthermore hosted numerous local and cultural events in Los Gatos. These events demonstrate a clear connection between the Muwekma and the town of Los Gatos. Because of its community, past and present, is so intertwined, it becomes imperative that the town consider greater support for the Muwekma. We hope that you consider writing a letter of support for the tribe. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no more cards, no one online, so I will close verbal communications. And with that, we'll now move to, let's see, item number 19.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a significant agenda item for the town. Risk and liability is something we deal with every day. And just like your personal homeowner's insurance, your car insurance, a claim against you can't necessarily be borne by the cash that you have in the bank, that you rely upon others to provide and extend coverage to you in the case of a catastrophic loss of a home, an injury, a tort claim, or a car accident. Jurisdictions like the town of Los Gatos and many others join joint powers authorities frequently across the state to collectively purchase insurance and provide that coverage at various levels to all their participants. The town of Los Gatos currently is a member of a JPA called Plan, and the recommendation that will be before you is to pass a resolution terminating our participation and membership in one JPA and moving to participation of a larger JPA. Part of the reason for that transition is, like the insurance that you pay for yourself, we should be looking at and conducting due diligence. And so what we're looking at is to improve our liability coverage, which is amongst the highest area of risk exposing the town, to engage in more proactive risk management so that rather than responding to claims, we try to avoid them by improving our internal processes, to reduce our financial exposure where the coverages that we are purchasing cover the gamut of risks that we may be exposed to, and then ultimately in doing this due diligence review as you would in your home insurance, trying to garner some cost savings to the town. Our recommendation is, as I mentioned earlier, to transition from Plan JPA to the CJPIA, and to pass and authorize the town manager and the town attorney to execute all such agreements to be able to do so. One of those includes issuing a notice of termination to our current JPA, which is due by December 31st. So why are we evaluating alternatives? The Government Finance Officers Association has guidance, an enterprise risk management guidance. And that guidance specifically talks to looking at the efficiency and effectiveness of our risk management programs. And that includes the insurances that we're buying and to make changes and modifications as necessary. So we went out and looked at several other JPAs, one of which is another JPA in the local area, Bay Cities, and another one which is the largest JPA in the state of California, the CJPIA, which has about 125, I think 126 members now. Our future projections show that we are looking at a structural imbalance between ongoing revenues and expenditures, so it's important for us to look at opportunities where we have ongoing costs, such as our insurance costs, if there are opportunities to actually reduce that cost. Over the course of the last 4 years, our premiums have gone up 68%. It's something somewhat common to what we're experiencing now with all the wildfires that occurred and the insurance rates that we're paying personally on our homes. And unfortunately, in many cases, folks that have actually lost coverage when they're in very high fire risk areas. But here, as we're collectively buying through a joint powers authority, we garner a lot of power in the number of entities that are participating in that program. So as we look to the financial impacts of this proposed change, I look to the premiums, for example. The coverages that we currently purchase are in the categories of liability, and I will go through what these cover later in the presentation. Liability, property, employee practices liability, cyber coverage, pollution coverage, crime, and public official coverages. And when we look at the rates that we were quoted by the CJPIA versus our current providers with the current rates we're paying, our rates are estimated to drop from about 1.48 million to about 1.37 million for a savings of about 7.4%, or a little over 100,000 in the pure cost of procuring the coverages. What we also will see, because of some of the changes in the liability coverage, as we currently budget approximately $200,000 for self-insured retentions, which otherwise is known as deductibles that you may pay prior to the insurance coverage covering something above and beyond those deductibles, we budget about $200,000 a year in the budget to cover any of the claims that we may have, for example, on the liability side, where currently our deductible or self-insured retention is about $50,000. So as we incur a claim, it may be just a complaint. It may not be necessarily something the town did wrong. We're engaging attorneys and we're incurring costs. That cost up to $50,000 is borne by the town. So therefore, we have to budget those dollars to pay for multiple claims that may come in at multiple dollar amounts up to that 50,000. In terms of the coverages that we're moving forward with the CJPIA, they do not have a deductible on their liability program, so we're able to reduce that self-insured retention we put in the budget of 200,000 to a lower amount. In both the programs, the current one we have and the new one, there are deductibles on property and other coverages. So therefore, we're leaving about $50,000 as what we plan on budgeting in the future. And so therefore, we garner a savings total up to approximately $259,000 with the change that we're proposing to make. I should note that it is an estimated savings. Many things go into the cost of insurance. Between now and July 1st, when we may start, we may have a phenomenal amount of claims, which would change the way the new JPA would look at us in terms of what they're going to charge us. It also may potentially drop. Other elements of cost that are not included in this fiscal impact are things that are currently being paid for out of the town budget that under the new JPA are included as part of the rates that are quoted here. One example is our Lexipol policy that the police department currently subscribes to at a cost of about $13,000. That's an included benefit in the new JPA. That $13,000 savings is not included in this estimate. And there are other enhancements that I will talk about later in the new change. So under our current program with the Pooled Liability Assurance Network Joint Powers Authority, we moved to this JPA in 2017. It was a conversion from the relationships we had with the Association of Bay Area Governments. It was a transfer without a whole lot of change in terms of the structure of the coverages to a 28-member pool that is concentrated around the Bay Area, with our northernmost partner being Fairfield and our southernmost partner being Morgan Hill. Our liability coverages have a self-insured retention or deductible of $50,000, which we pay the first $50,000, and it would cover us through their entire layers all the way up to $30 million. So in the case that we have some catastrophic tort claim event and we're sued, we are incurring the legal costs, and if there's a settlement cost of, let's say, $5, $6, $7 million, the total cost incurred by the town for all that coverage is $50,000, and then our JPA through the insurance and relationships they procured covers the rest up to $30 million. So it's important to note not just what you're paying at the beginning, the first $50,000, how far up is the coverage, and then evaluating that against the risk exposure that you may have as an agency, one being public safety, which is a higher risk activity, and ensuring that you have the proper coverages both at the top and at the bottom to reduce the exposure to your budget and outcomes for the town. Some of the notable attributes of our current program, the planned JPA has served Los Gatos very well. We've had very good experience, have had some very successful defenses against claims. And they're also known as a very reputable JPA in the state of California. Their board of directors are made up of staff, and the administration of the actual organization itself is done through a third-party administrator called Sedgwick, which also has a very good reputation nationally in the industry. In terms of the 28 members that are concentrated around the Bay Area isn't small, it's pretty large. The ones that are nearest to us, our partners that we would normally turn to on other topics, are just 4 other cities: Saratoga, Campbell, Los Altos, and Milpitas. The other jurisdictions are in different JPA and different coverages. So it's not that all of Santa Clara, all 15 cities are in one JPA together. In our new proposed relationship, the JPA represents 125 organizations, of which 75% of them are cities, and those cities and the other 25%, which are open space districts, transit authorities, come from as far south as the Mexican border, across the entire border on both sides, east and west of California, all the way north to San Mateo County, with the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District being the entity they have in San Mateo County. They are not an organization that normally is recruiting and trying to pull in more jurisdictions into their body. They tend to get folks that see the value, the reputation, and what they bring to the table holistically in the area of risk management, and have people making applications to the JPA. In my career now, spanning 29 years in local government, I've had multiple JPAs I've had the pleasure of working with. One on the far north of California, CJPRMA, that also had some jurisdictions in the Bay Area. I've also had the relationship with this organization we're proposing, CJPIA, when I was in Southern California. They tend to be concentrated a little more on the southern side of the state. And then now the Plan JPIA, and then other institutions on the higher education side that insure those institutions. And I have to say the JPA model is the right model for doing risk management. And CJPIA, I will say, amongst all of them, is truly a Cadillac in terms of the range of services and what they offer and the coverage levels. And I think that's very important to a jurisdiction like Los Gatos. Their liability program, which is the highest level exposure that we would have, has what's called first dollar coverage. There is no deductible. All the costs that are incurred start from the first dollar cost that we would normally be paying would be borne by the JPA. And the coverage tower that they have includes reinsurance in excess that goes as high as $50 million, which is $20 million higher than our current level. So as it pertains to some of our highest risk exposures, very difficult police cases that may occur that you've seen across the country, or other liabilities that we have statutory responsibility with, trees, sidewalks, streets, and what the like, the coverage is a lot broader with the new JPA. The JPA provides additional standard coverages that we currently have in the areas of property, cyber, pollution, crime, and employee liability coverage. 2 years ago, we started procuring employee liability coverage. This is, employee practices coverage. We didn't have that prior to that, which meant anytime you had an employee issue, that cost was fully borne by the town. So luckily, we purchased that 2 years ago. In the new JPA, that liability is not separate. It's included within the liability program with the broad coverages that are there. In terms of vetting this organization, we had to make an application to the organization. So our application went through a very rigorous review where we had to be we provided a tremendous amount of information. Then we had a visit by one of their senior risk managers who's here in the audience, and I'll introduce him a little later in the presentation. An initial risk management evaluation of the town was done, where the risk manager received more information after our initial application, evaluated that information, and then came and did a site visit looking across our organization and looking at other exposures, and then putting together a report of recommendations for improving and strengthening our risk management program. I will say just at this point, the town received the value of that evaluation at no cost to the town. That is something that they do on an ongoing basis with all their members, and so they keep tabs of recommendations and keep working with the town in terms of improving upon that. We went through a review by their underwriting committee where they look at our exposure history into the past and see what kind of risk we would pose to the JPA pool. They looked at both the non-sworn, non-public safety side as well as the public safety side of the house. On the non-public safety side of the house, we're just a little bit below the average in terms of the exposure. So we're aligned with what they would expect to see from other jurisdictions. But on the side of the police department, we are significantly lower in terms of the experience rate that we see, which is a positive thing for a JPA wanting us to take us in a membership. It also begets lower rates that they may charge us for the exposure. But I want to say, and unfortunately the chief's not here, I hope she's listening online, a true compliment to the chief, her staff, and all our police officers, and how they do their community-oriented policing, and how they use their professionalism and their training to result in reduced liability to the town, which is going to benefit us with lower rates. Some of the notable attributes of the new JPA: their board is actually driven by elected officials instead of staff. So elected officials serve on the board. One of the founding elected officials was actually the mayor of San Dimas, which I didn't have the pleasure to work with, but I built a very close relationship being the city manager down there. And they have a dedicated full-time staff that drive a variety of areas within the JPA. They also do leverage third parties for claims review and whatnot. So it's a very expansive program, very dedicated, been around for many decades, and very focused on proactiveness in terms of the risk management program and coverages that serve a very broad range of entities that they serve. They also have internal city staff committees, which is something unique. Risk management committee, finance, and a city management committee, all of which are staffed by individuals that are within those type of categories. They're either risk managers, they're either finance staff, or they're in the management ranks, that review various aspects of best practices and policies for the JPA and make recommendations to best practices, which then get pushed out to all the jurisdictions to benefit from having them develop the best practice once and then delivering it to 125 agencies. They have a tremendous amount of ancillary services, some of which are not seen in many other JPAs. For one, they recently implemented a public safety wellness program, which is intended to help reduce workers' compensation and other liability type claims, which is going to be a great benefit to us, which we currently incur cost in our budget, which now would be reduced because of the services that they provide. I mentioned the lexical policies and the $13,000 savings. They also have an on-staff, on-call attorney that's available for us to pick up the phone and call when we have quick employment-related matters, which is a huge benefit. A lot of the times, we have a situation that may be happening that requires a specialized expertise in the employment side. This individual who understands how our insurance system works is available for us to be able to get quick answers and give us direction. The new JPA also provides an on-call emergency public information officer service during the course of critical incidents. There was one we recently had unfortunately, on Thanksgiving evening. If there was need to bring in resources to help address dramatic concern from external national news and whatnot, they do have contracts already in place and bear the cost to provide that service to us should we need that. And they also offer what I believe is the most robust training and best practices examples across many different risk areas that I've seen in all the JPAs that I've worked with. In terms of how they operate collectively, they've broken down the state into districts, and each district is assigned a senior risk manager. We're fortunate that in our region, Region 2, our risk manager, Tim Kars, who's here today in the audience, if you can wave and say hello, is amongst their most senior risk manager in the state. So we're fortunate to have him here. He comes to us with over 20 years of experience in a variety of roles, private and public sector, and he's been with the California JPIA since 2006, becoming a full-time risk manager in 2018 with them. He's conducted dozens and dozens, now in the realm of, I think, hundreds of risk management evaluations, including the one he performed for us as an initial assessment, conducted multiple trainings and academies for the authority. And I need to highlight, in terms of when we talk about academies are concentrated, robust training programs for specific areas, for example, public safety and whatnot, where our staff can then participate and get multi-day trainings on those topics that make them better employees and stewards of coming back and enhancing the risk management environment in the town. Now, I can take the next 2 or 3 hours to go through the very detailed layer by layer, item by item of the insurance coverages, but I won't. I'll just hit some of the highlights and talk about what the coverages are and what the advantage the California JPIA brings to the town. The liability coverage, which is a broad umbrella across the town, is used to protect the town for any type of tort claim that ranges from injuries that may have occurred on public property, civil right and police incidents that may occur, dangerous conditions in our capital and infrastructure that may have exposed somebody to injury or impact, employee claims that may come from within, vehicle accidents, and any other things that you generally tend to get sued for that are considered torts. They also pay for legal defense and settlements or judgments. This is the same in both JPAs that we're currently a part of and what we're proposing to. In terms of the advantage the new JPA provides to us, I've talked about we eliminate the $50,000 self-insured retention and we increase the cap on the limits from $30 million to $50 million. The new JPA also provides an additional coverage which we don't currently have, which is called Earth Movement Claim Coverage. This has a retained limit of $125,000. Well, what is this? When we have a compromise of public infrastructure, let's say a road or hillside compromise, and it impacts somebody's home, for example, a home that may end up in a landslide and is destroyed because of some weakness that the town may have had in its public infrastructure. This coverage does not cover the town for the compromise on the road or the hillside, but it covers the town to cover the costs associated with that homeowner that lost their home, which could be, in Los Gatos, a very significant expense. This California JPIA also has a fully coordinated defense process. Currently, we work a lot more in terms of the claims that we manage when there's a liability claim against the town. Here, what happens when a claim comes in, it's referred to the California JPA, and they take it from there with their staff and contractors and attorneys. And so I believe it provides us holistically on the liability side a stronger financial protection and provides for more consistent claims management and also, importantly, reduces impact on our limited staff. In terms of the property coverage, this covers all our tangible asset properties that we itemize or list. That's our buildings, our equipment, our vehicles, things within our buildings and vehicles, our infrastructure that may be damaged from catastrophic events, fire, water, wind, vandalism, vehicle impacts, such as our parklet, which was destroyed on Thanksgiving evening, as well as coverage for any new property we may acquire or construction of a new property while it's actually being constructed. The interesting thing about the new JPA, when we're constructing, let's say, a new building, we're fully covered insurance-wise on that new building during the course of construction, yet they do not charge us for that building until that building is brought online and then programmed into the property program. It also does cover loss of revenue due to an impact. So we have a leasee that pays us $150,000 or a museum or a theater that pays us. If something happens due to a catastrophic loss, there's insurance coverage that covers that for that lost revenue that may be otherwise due to the town. So in terms of the overall advantage for the town, the California JPA does provide clear limits for the new acquisitions. It provides dedicated tax revenue interruption coverage and has some very practical sublimits, for example, a $2,500 deductible for a vehicle loss, which is pretty low, which is great for us if we ever have a loss of vehicles. And it provides us a simpler and more predictable protection of our assets through that program. In the more recent day and age, many cities and other organizations have been the victims of cyber attacks. So we currently procure, and we will have in the new JPA, cyber security coverage, which covers responses to data breaches, hacking, ransomware, system failures. And the coverage typically covers forensics, notifications, identity protections, aspects that are required under law, that when an employee or a resident for which you have their personally identifiable information is breached, that we are obligated to do certain things with regards to that. That's covered through the JPIA. They use a flat $100,000 deductible. It makes it very simple in terms of going through the process. I had the unfortunate experience of having to endure a potential breach. Fortunately, the breach was not a real breach, but the way the JPIA operated was like it was. Identifying the individuals that may have been exposed, providing them notification, providing them coverage, identity theft protection coverage, as is required under law. And that happened in a very seamless fashion with very limited work on the side of staff. Another coverage that we procure and will continue is our pollution and environmental coverage. It protects the towns in events that we may have fuel spills, mold, Legionnaire's disease, contamination, damage to soil or groundwater, and it covers the cleanup, remediation, business interruption, and third-party damages. And so the total coverage limit is a unified $5 million per incident, which is pretty good. For us, I don't expect us to have many of these, but when they do incur, they are very significant in terms of cost. Where there is money, there are people that want to take it. And so therefore we have crime coverage, which protects against the theft of our money and property, dishonesty by employees, forgery, fraud, fund transfer fraud schemes, and computer fraud. So the California JPIA will allow us to get a higher limit up to, and we get to pick the amount up to $5 million in coverage with flexible deductibles. What we currently receive is approximately $2 million in coverage. The price that's in the fiscal impact is for $3 million coverage. It is not that expensive to go all the way to $5 million if we choose to do so under this new program. Our next area is another area of potential higher risk, not as high as necessarily public safety, but anytime you have employees, there's also exposure that goes with it. And so claims of wrongful termination, discrimination, harassment, retaliation, and other employment-related allegations, the defense costs, the judgments, and the settlements are covered through a typical employment practices liability coverages. And we would have a very robust program with the California JPIA. I have also had the unfortunateness of being in an organization that had to utilize this coverage. And I will say that, once again, one of the basic benefits of the strength and size of this JPA and the dedicated employees that are internal, hired by that JPA, is that they really care about taking you from soup to nuts, taking on most of the workload and work on their side, limiting the work that impacts staff in terms of prosecuting those type of claims. So with that, I will repeat the recommendation that we adopt a resolution authorizing the town manager and town attorney to issue written notice of termination of the town's membership in the Pooled Liability Assurance Network Joint Powers Authority at the end of the current fiscal year, which ends June 30th, 2026, and to execute all necessary agreements to join the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority and obtain the appropriate risk management and insurance coverages. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor, for questions and potential action.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not seeing any cards on this, so is there anyone online who wants to speak on it?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, so I'll close public comment. Councilmember Badami.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions. So did I understand correctly that we did not have EPL coverage until 2 years ago? We went all those years without it?
That's
Yes.
correct.
Is there a reason for that? Especially with the...
There could be a variety of reasons, but I will say that you didn't incur a claim that would have triggered you wishing you had that employee liabilities coverage. But we've had it for the last 2 years, and we will continue to have it going forward.
Okay, so with us having it for the last 2 years, was that cost, and I don't know, it's a separate policy, so do we know the cost of that, or was the cost of that incorporated into this chart?
It's incorporated into the chart. So in the gray area represents the planned JPA, and so you will see an item for IRMA or employee liability coverage that's a dollar amount. You would have to add that to the liability number at the top to get the coverages that equal just the liability number of the last column, which is the California JPA. So okay. Yes, it's in there.
Okay, I'm just trying to reconcile. It's like a 35% increase in premiums from 24 to 25. That being said, if we turn in claims, is there like a surcharge like regular insurance, like home and auto?
Well, this is a perfect opportunity to turn it to who would potentially be our future risk manager. Tim.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow council members. I'm Tim. I had a slide dedicated to me a few minutes ago, so I appreciate it, Mr. Constantine. To answer your question, no, there's no specific surcharge for the amount of claims provided. It's in our pooled method, the only cost is the cost of the claim over the course of its life. There's no specific claim cost for any of our programs.
Thank you.
I will add, they do have a 5-year method of amortizing if you had abnormal claims losses. That also include caps to that exposure, correct?
Yes, if I'm understanding you correctly. We calculate the annual cost of coverage based on 2 primary factors. One is the town's overall payroll and the actual experience that we have had losses over a 5-year period. Since the town will be new, we're using data from your previous 5 years with another organization that we have available to us. So that will mature over the course of the first couple of years being in our group.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask about the mix of members. That's one of the big differences I noticed from our current plan to the new plan. Our current plan, I believe, is entirely towns and cities, and this new plan is 79% cities, with 5% being special districts and 16% being JPAs. I guess my question is, are we going to notice that? I know it's just a larger group, so that seems inevitable, but will anything change, especially with special districts where cities are pretty different than special districts? So I don't know who the right person is for that question.
Good question. So we have 126 members. I believe you would be the 127th. And you're right, the percentage is mostly towns and cities. We do have a few other towns. We would be pretty excited to have another one, by the way. And some of our larger members, in fact, Mid-Penn is one of our larger members. The only effect or impact our other members will have on the town is when we purchase insurance on behalf of our members, and we do purchase excess insurance and other types of coverages, our rates that we get are an accumulation and a calculation based on our overall pool performance. And those particular rates could benefit the town or adversely benefit the town based on the insurance market. For the most part, being a larger pool than plan, we're able to leverage the additional members that we have in the larger group and the more pooled amount of coverage that we provide ourselves to get the best rates possible.
Great, thank you. So the diversity theoretically should be helpful to us.
Yes.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions. So in looking at the fiscal impact, which is page 1 of the staff report, it only looks at the outlays. It doesn't look at the fiscal impact of the benefits. But in looking at that, it looks like overall $250,000 savings annually over our current one. But there were some that were pretty different, and I just wanted to make sure that they made sense. So it looked like our liability insurance went up by $150,000, but our property insurance went down by $150,000. We picked up the IRMA included, so that is essentially a reduction of about $100,000, and our self-insured retention payments went down by $150,000. So all of that nets out to about $250,000. Does that make sense for such big changes in the categories that I mentioned, especially, the property insurance and the self-insured?
So I'm not a risk manager, but I would say the two pools are very distinctly different. So our current agency has 28 members that are very concentrated around the Bay Area. Their experience isn't necessarily holistically the same that the experience on property may be in the California JPIA. I will say that when we went before the executive board, the agenda item right before our item of consideration of membership was actually a status report on how they were performing, and they had really, really good results on the property side of the house. And so it is very conceivable that, yes, they can garner a much better rate. The rate's based on the itemized list of assets that we provided to the California JPA. We do not have what's called a TRV, which is a armored vehicle, which garners, I think, 13 cents per 10,000 valuation. And that would have been a material increase to the rate that's currently charged. And so this could go up and down by some amount, but I don't think it could possibly go up as high as 250,000 unless half of our list of assets wasn't listed on the program. But Tim, can you speak to why there would be such wide-ranging changes between two JPAs?
I can't speak for why Plan might be charging what they are. I can tell you that the California JPIA experienced very, very good property renewals over the last couple of years, including this year. We do have a lot of members in Southern California. None of our members were impacted by the large fires that recently occurred. And we also enjoy a lot of scale. We have billions of dollars of property values that we're insuring. And that benefits us. And we also have a very aggressive approach with our leadership team in our insurance program management in terms of renewal. So I don't expect an increase like that to occur. That said, if you added some new property we didn't know about, or if you had some other types of properties that we didn't know about, which I don't think would happen because we have all the information, that would of course be applied to the rates and it would increase it. So I can't imagine anything changing it in terms of that. Even property losses on your end, if you did incur any, I don't think that would change.
Okay, thank you. I had another question, and that was about the cap. So I understand that we're moving from 30 million to 50 million per occurrence, and that's substantial benefit. I'm kind of curious about how long we've been at 30 million. Do we know that? And I have a follow-on to that.
Definitely since 2017, I believe, but I would have to dig out history to go far back and see how far.
Yeah.
I can tell you that we haven't come near $30 million in any of our claim. I think our largest year was just shy of $400,000 on a liability claim a couple of years ago due to a tree. But the type of claims that you would see garnering 30, 40, 50 million, in my experience serving on an insurance board of 42 agencies that contracted law enforcement services, are really horrendous police-related cases, complex ones, multiple deaths potentially involved, bad police practices, things of that nature. I don't expect that to be, I don't think Los Gatos should expect that to occur, but being insured against it is definitely a good feeling.
Right. And so how do we keep up with having the right cap? So, do we look at this every, 15 years? Or do we, how do we make sure that we're paying attention and we have the right cap?
Well, there's only one cap on the liability. It's the 50 million. So it's not like we can look at, do we go down to 30? Do we go up to 70 in terms of the way the programs typically work? But I think we go back to the Government Finance Officers Association's guidance on enterprise risk management. Like many things, we should be periodically looking and doing our due diligence in terms of what we have. Here, we're doing the due diligence on the entire program. But more frequently internally, we should be looking at the risk exposures and determining, are we missing something? We're at $3 million or proposed $3 million for cybersecurity coverage. And let's say Saratoga and Santa Clara are hit with major cyber hits that are costing them $4 million. Yeah, that would probably tell me to work with the California JPIA and say maybe we bump up to 5 million since the cost is not as significant. Or it may be we've evaluated an area of risk, our policies are old, our training isn't where we should be. Can we do something different in that area to reduce that risk exposure? So I think there's various things that we should be doing on a regular basis.
So we need to keep on top of it, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I can add to that. In terms of the coverage limits, we spend a lot of time and resources on an ongoing basis to determine what is best utilized, what is the most advantageous that we can purchase, and we've landed on $50 million per occurrence on the liability side as being an appropriate number. We're large. We've been around for a while. We have hit that before with some of our other members, unfortunately, mostly related to design roadway conditions and not police. However, that is one of the larger exposures that the town has. Our approach to that is aggressive defense and representing the town in a way where only what is absolutely the town is absolutely responsible for is what is paid, if and when that happens. We have an advantage with you. You have an in-house attorney that can help us manage that process, which we would very much look forward to.
Great, thank you. Other questions from the council? Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? No, none online. I think we did public comment, so thank you very much for your participation and presentation. And so, council members, do you have any comments or like to make a motion? Councilmember Badami.
Thank you. The change makes sense, higher coverage, lower costs. So I'll go ahead and make a motion, although I did see the Vice Mayor's hand up if he wanted to make a comment. Okay. All right. I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the town manager and town attorney to issue written notice of termination of the town's membership in the Pooled Liability Assurance Network Joint Powers Authority at the end of the fiscal year, and to execute all necessary agreements to join the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority and obtain risk management and insurance coverages.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
I'll second, and I'll just comment that I think this is a fantastic thing for the town. I want to especially applaud our town manager for being so proactive and taking this on. I think this is the sort of thing that, you know, speaking for myself, I don't think very much about the town of Los Gatos's, you know, major insurance policies, and so it's fantastic to have someone leading the town who is thinking about how to protect us from, you know, all of our unknowns. I think the diversity of members and the expanded geography is going to be a big benefit to the town. I think the size of the plan is a big benefit to the town, and as Councilmember Badami said, better coverage at a lower cost is hard to turn down.
Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I want to echo those comments, and I do appreciate that our town manager did this work, because I think we have a lot of processes that maybe are working well, but sometimes you look into it or you look into a policy and say, can we do better? And I think in addition to the lower cost for better coverage, the assessment and the risk assessment and looking at areas where we can then reduce our risks so we're not needing the insurance as much is also helpful. So I appreciate this item coming forward, and I appreciate this opportunity. Thanks.
Great. I just wanted to add my thanks to town manager and staff. Sometimes these things just go on autopilot, but you took a different approach and said, can we do something different that offers more for less? And government agencies don't usually do that. So it's very much appreciated. And so with that, I'll call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, thank you for those comments, but I have to say this was a partnership with the town attorney. I also need to thank various staff members, including Gita, in terms of the amount of workload and lift that they had to do to put this together to get it to the finish line.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 20. And item 20 is under, let's see. So this is not a council matter, is that correct? It's a regular agenda item?
It is on the agenda for discussion by the town council to get direction to town staff.
Okay, great. So thank you, Mr. Mullen.
Great, thank you, Mayor. The Historic Preservation Committee has forwarded a letter to the council regarding the town's approach and regulations pertaining to historic preservation. As a reminder, town commissions, committees, and boards serve at the pleasure of the council, and any work plans are established by council direction. The committee's letter outlines several potential historic preservation items requiring review and consideration by the committee, planning commission, and the council. Staff seeks council guidance on which items the council is interested in exploring. Should the council provide guidance on items of interest, staff would evaluate them to identify potential impacts related to staffing and budgetary resources. Items could then be considered through the strategic priorities process. The letter was developed by the committee themselves without much staff involvement, just some guidance and providing them the venue to have their discussions. Staff looks forward to tonight's discussion and is available to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. So I really want to thank the Historic Preservation Committee for working on this. And so with the opportunity for public comment, I have one card from Lee Quintana. And then if anyone else would like to comment before we start our discussion.
Oops. I'll just hold it. It's easier. Lee Quintana. I'm the chair of the Historic Preservation Committee, and frankly, I don't know how to proceed. I can go ahead and give you a short summary of what we consider to be the most important items, although I can also just answer questions that you have. I did make a list of what I considered the most important items. It's hard to do that because they're so interconnected. So I did reduce the number of the most important items from the 20 that we listed in our letter to 9. And I would ask you for some direction as to how you would like me to proceed.
Why don't you go ahead, and then there'll be time for questions when you're done with your presentation.
Okay. As you have, I initially brought up the question at the Historic Preservation Committee under committee matters, and we proceeded to work on this item, which are the most important issues that we think the committee has to face. There's, I think, a lot of confusion. Let me start over again. I'm just going to say that probably the most important items are, 1, amending the Article 8, Division 3 overlay zone for historic preservation to add a definition of what the town considers significant historic resources. And we are primarily looking at not only landmark buildings and historic districts, but also pre-1941 homes as having definition within the code. The other thing is to add, excuse me, findings to the code on how we determine those historic properties. Currently, neither of those are included in the code. We do use 5 different findings, but they're not within the code, and there's confusion as to which of the findings apply to the state and federal projects, applications, and which apply to additional properties that the town recognizes as, and I'm almost finished with my presentation. It's only 13 minutes left, and I'm only on point 1, so I'm going to stop there.
Okay, thank you. And I think all of us have read the letter as well. So if there are questions now, Councilmember Badami.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Quintana, for your hard work, and other members of the Historic Preservation Committee. I'm not sure I understood you. You said that you had a list of 20 and reduced it to 9, because what I have in front of me is 20 items. So
Yeah, you have 20 items that are in the letter and in our table. I picked out 9, which I thought were the most important. But like I said, they're so interconnected, it's hard to speak about one without it flowing over into another category.
Okay, so with the 9 that you picked out, is it in order 1 through 9? How do I know which are the 9 that you picked out in particular?
Well, you don't, because I wasn't, in 3 minutes, I could not state them all. I can tell you what they are very briefly.
If you could give me a list real quick.
Okay, like I said, defining what the town considers significant historic resources.
Okay, what number is that? If you just give me numbers, it would make it easy.
I see it as number 5.
Okay, so we have number 5.
Yeah. Okay, number 5, adding findings to the code to define what those historic resources are.
See that at number 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Clarifying the difference between state and federal findings and the town's findings.
That's 7?
7.
That's 7. In other
Okay.
words, the town has 5 findings that we use.
Okay.
The federal and state criteria are the first.
Okay. If we could go on with the numbers, and then
Okay.
that way we can take a look at them.
Okay.
Because we've got 3 out of, we need 6 more.
Update the inventory. Update the survey. Divide the survey
11.
from the inventory.
Okay, so we have 11.
Can we start this over? Let me go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll tell you which ones are on my top. Okay?
Okay.
Number 1, clarified demolition, etc. 2, clarify the definition of a contributor to a potential historic district. I'm sorry.
Okay, you know what? 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm going to start over because, and I'm going to apologize. I usually take a propranolol before I speak publicly, and I forgot to take it, so I'm a little bit sort of nervous. I have performance anxiety. Okay. So I'm going to try and approach this in a different way. Let's look at Chapter 29, Article 1, Division 1, miscellaneous 2910-09030, which is demolitions. That's the first category in our list. And under that category were several things. On this particular item, to tell you the truth, that section is so confusing that we believe it needs to be totally rewritten. It defines what it states that you can only demolish historic resources if it's an imminent safety hazard. But it doesn't define what findings you need to make that. It doesn't say who makes that determination. And there's a seeming conflict between that section of the code and the historic preservation section of the code as to what, who makes the determination of eminent safety.
Okay, so I see that. So I've got 7 now. I've got 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 11, and 8 out of the 9 that you said. And I see another speaker coming forward after you. So I want to make sure that we also hear her. She might be able to supplement what you are advising us on.
Okay.
And I'll leave it up to the mayor with the 3 minutes and the question and answer period.
Yeah, I'm not sure that continuing this will be that productive. I think we have an excellent letter in front of us that all of us have read. And so I'd like to see whether there are any very specific questions. If not, I'd like to invite another speaker and then to try to put this together. I do have sort of an organizing thought for this that I'd like to offer, but I'd want to wait until I hear from all the speakers.
Okay, can I just make one closing comment? I think the major issue is clarifying demolitions, defining what our resources are, defining the findings that are necessary, how they change, how they differ between state and federal and the town resources, and as I said, I think the demolition part of the ordinance needs to be totally redone. I think we've explained in here why. And I also think that there needs to be a better organization of the overlay ordinance so that what goes into making our decisions comes all together in the ordinance in one section instead of being dribbled out throughout so that you never, most people don't go read to the end of the ordinance. And it's pretty confusing. I would say basically, and I apologize for this, for saying this, but I find that Los Gatos often makes their codes pretty complicated where they don't need to be and pretty simple where they need to be more complicated. And I'm really hoping that we can do something about making the historic preservation process more understandable to everybody. Because if the Historic Preservation Committee has problems understanding what we're working with, certainly the public can't understand it by just reading our documents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you for the work. Susan Burnett?
Good evening, Council. Mayor Hudis, which we won't be able to say that much longer. We'll have a new Council Chairman, Mayor Rob Moore, and whoever is Vice Mayor. Anyway,
December 9th.
Pardon?
December 9th.
December 9th. Anyway, congratulations. Whatever. Anyway, I want to sort of make sort of a summary statement. This all came about is because what we see at the Historic Preservation Committee, we see a continual loss of our smaller homes. And as Los Gatos and Rob Moore, I know, is a big advocate of this, we're trying to save our smaller homes, our housing element. This is what our goal is. What happens, how people come in, houses are taken out of inventory, they're demoed. We lose those small homes because we don't have enough sort of teeth in our code. Our findings are not in the town code. We need those in the town code so that we have a little more say in what happens. Right now we have the national and the state, values and what those, our elements are, but we need to upgrade our integrity part, historic integrity area element of the findings. So that's one of the area put our findings in the code. We also need to really tighten up how our houses are taken out of out of the inventory and demoed. If there's demolition done to these smaller homes, there's a lot of confusion between the different chapters in our design guidelines, chapter 3 and 4. There's a lot of crisscrossing in there, so that should be cleaned up. There's not, the things that are so important, it wouldn't take a lot of staff time, and I know we would help with that. Also, the FAR is a big deal. You know, we have our smaller homes mainly in the district R-1D, and you have like a 4,500 square foot lot, and you can maximize the building on that. So I think that that's another area that here's a small lot, and if we can somehow change the FAR or the setbacks, side setbacks, front setbacks, so that would be another area that we could keep these homes smaller so that they wouldn't be so expensive, and the smaller, you know, a moderate family, a young family could buy. Because we're losing, well, I think the bottom line is we're losing our small, moderate homes. The other one, that if a house comes out of inventory, that it comes back to the Historic Preservation Committee for the design input on it. I think that would be a really important thing. And so I think for me, there's like five major things that, and I don't think it'd be a lot of staff. There's so much work to be done in the committee, but I think we could just highlight maybe these 5 items, and maybe our town mayor has some other suggestions. Plus that the historic districts, you know, there was a Glen Ridge Historic District that I actually had written the ordinance on in 1998, and that I think we could maybe look again at our historic districts and maybe just give that a little more attention as well.
Thank you.
Those are my thoughts.
And I like the number 5, and I do have 5 that I'd like to use to try to organize some of this when we finish the questions or comments. But thank you. Are there any questions, Ms. Burnett?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'll close public comment. I don't see anyone online. And so back to the council. Does council have some questions? And like I said, I have read this letter, and there's really 2 parts to this letter. There are the 7 objectives, and then there are the 20 items. And I've tried to organize those under some overall objectives. And so let me just start with a comment. Having served on the Historic Preservation Committee, it's a very tough job, but it's really important. And Los Gatos is well ahead of other communities, and you can tell just by looking around. The number of structures that we've preserved, the neighborhoods that we've preserved is truly remarkable, but we can't stop. And so, I noted that since 2015, there have been over 180 potentially historic structures removed from the inventory and 0 added. Once they're gone, we don't have any ability to do anything to preserve the historic character of the town. So I think we have to do more to preserve historic assets. In 2020, some of these recommendations were written. I went back to those. I had hoped they would be incorporated in the 2040 general plan. They were not. But I've had a sort of a fresh look with some input, particularly on the preserving smaller homes category. But I'd be happy to run through those. But if there are other comments first, I'd be happy to listen to those. Councilmember Rennie.
I'll just start, and hopefully maybe that'll help confine it a little bit. But when I look at, even the objective list, this looks like a lot of work. And we've got a planning department that's got about a dozen large projects coming this year. I can't see giving them very much work. What ultimately I would ask them after you give us your reorganization of this is what's the low-hanging fruit that we can do kind of quickly. And I just say this ahead of you so you kind of keep that in mind, that I'm already thinking this is way too much work, but if you can help focus it to something that won't take the department down during a critical year.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I think when I think about the historic districts, there's a number of parameters. And I live in a historic house in a historic district, and I've watched homes on my street change. And I think one of the biggest problems, and I don't know if the Historic Preservation Committee is asking for more tight guidance, is that that body changes with different people on there. And sometimes things are allowed and sometimes there's not. So I know in historic areas, the garage is supposed to be detached from the house and in the back. Yet there are homes on my street that were built lot edge to lot edge with an attached garage. And so sometimes these guidelines, maybe you need an exception in certain situations, but I feel like a lot of these exceptions are made that really change the character of a historic district. So I'm not sure where we can go with this. I also think about the fact that, the pre-1941, when that was set, I did discuss this with somebody who used to be on historic preservation, and he had a really good characterization. That was sort of a net that was cast, that potentially homes in that time range would be historic resources, but it was meant to decrease. That if you cast this net of anything that's pre-1941 could be historic, you expect that you're going to be taking things out. And then I do think that the guidance in historic areas to keep to specific styles. I'll see something that is a pseudo-Victorian that doesn't have any of the right aspect ratios. I think taking a house down that is potentially not really worth saving, or it's so small nobody wants to live in it, and putting an addition on it is going to look silly. A replacement home needs to look like it matches in the historic district. Not necessarily historic, but true to its character and style. So those are the top level things I'm thinking about, where I'm not sure how we can get there without putting a lot of work on staff. We can't. Okay. But anyway, those are the things I think about, because I think there's been decisions along the way that just have not even stood up to what we've embraced for our historic preservation.
Great, thank you. So my thought is that this work has gone on with a committee without much engagement from staff, and that it would really benefit from some engagement and focus. So I would hope to move the ball forward, not by making decisions tonight about what we do, but asking staff to work further on some objectives. And I wanted to maybe name 5 of those that I think encompass some of the comments that have been made. The first objective would be to preserve smaller homes. The second would be to review the boundaries of the districts. The third would be to refresh the Bloomfield survey that we rely on so much. The fourth would be to have replacement structures be historically relevant. And the fifth would look at changing the date from pre-1941 to a rolling 70-year. I can go a little deeper into all of those 5, and I'm happy to pass those thoughts on to staff, but I really think that staff needs to engage, to come back to council and say, oh, how much work is it going to be to do any of these things? Not for us to decide we're doing 1, 3, and 5 or something like that tonight. And I would, that's where I would think we could go with this. So I'm going to rewind back to the top about preserving smaller homes. I think that can be accomplished by preserving homes of modest historic significance and prevent replacement of oversized and out-of-scale, economically unattainable structures. structures that take up the whole lot. And those are supported in the document in Objective A and numbers 1, 2, and 5. And that would be by focusing on the definitions, required findings, etc. That's how you accomplish it. But what you're trying to accomplish is to preserve smaller homes. The second is the boundaries of the historic districts. We have fragmented districts that have evolved over time by taking units out of certain areas, but also we have, especially the Glenridge neighborhood that has historic homes, that is not in a district. And so that would be to do a new independent survey to review the boundaries and make some rational recommendations of where the boundaries should be if there are any new districts. And that relates to Objective G in the letter and number 14A. The third thing is the refresh of the Bloomfield survey. And we rely on that a lot. It's out of date, it's missing some items, but the worst thing is the photographs are black and white and fuzzy. And we could simply get digital, high-quality color digital photographs to that inventory and refresh that inventory, and then we could go from there. It would be, I think, very helpful. That relates to Objective D and number 11 in the letter. The fourth one isn't so much in the letter, but I think it relates to what Councilmember Risto brought up and others, that in a historic district, when a replacement structure is proposed, that it be historically relevant. And I had an example of 15 Loma Alta that was removed from inventory. The applicant promised a design with the character of the original house, but then sold the property to a developer who ignored all of these and produced a design that was approved by the DRC because there was no requirement. The Planning Commission rejected the design. It went back and forth, but it would have been really natural to have that go back, have the replacement design go back to Historic Preservation Committee. That was number 4. And then the fifth one, the idea was to change from 1941 to rolling 70-year. That would bring the date now back to 1955, and that would bring in our mid-century architecture that exists in certain neighborhoods in town and could enhance, again, the character of some neighborhoods and retain the character of some neighborhoods that were built around that. So those were the 5 that I identified. I did map them to the objectives in the letter, and I think that this, before really doing work on these 5, it would be great to have staff's input and assessment working with HPC to get some clarification, but to come back to council with which ones of those maybe we could get started on now, and which ones we'd need to take a much longer time, maybe need a more significant budget, maybe need to get some grants from the state or elsewhere, federal government, to help us with those as well. So those are some of my thoughts. Preserving smaller homes, reviewing the boundaries, refreshing the survey, having replacement go to HPC, and moving from pre-1941 to rolling 70. So those are the thoughts. So, any reaction to that? Councilmember Badami?
I think all of these items are great and deserving to be looked at. When we talk about the charm of Los Gatos, much of it is attributed to the uniqueness of our historic neighborhoods. I also had served on the Historic Preservation Committee. I learned a lot about our neighborhoods way back, and then from there, I served on the Planning Commission. But what I think is really important, everything's important, what you said. I don't know how much time we have with staff, but we're always looking for findings and definitions when we make determinations and deliberations. And to me, that helps meet expectations from our town residents, but also from the committee members. So again, I think all of these are great. I'm just concerned about how much time it would take from staff, but if you could come back and let us know, I think that would be great. But I think all of the items that you emphasize are terrific. Findings and definitions, I think, is extra helpful for all of us when we make decisions.
Councilmember Rennie.
So just, the first thing that strikes me that I think could add a lot of work to some of these is the way I think about it, when we change our regulations or we decide to give an exception or something to somebody wants to change their land use, when I look at it as when somebody purchases their property, there's a set of rules in place, and that I think of that that's what they're entitled to. Anything more is a privilege. If you think about these, you may have people that bought small homes thinking, okay, I can get in now, I'm going to expand my family, and I know that I can make it larger. If we change the rule on them so they can't change their small home, we've changed, we've taken away what they thought was the contract. I'll just call it a contract when they bought it, because these were the certain rules that were in place. So, in changing the boundaries is the same kind of thing. Does the Glenridge neighborhood want to be in a historic district? I think before we just go impose these, there's a lot of community work that needs to occur. And so I just want that to be thought about in sizing the work here. I want to be careful about taking away people's entitlements. It's maybe not really an entitlement, but that's sort of the way I think of it.
Yeah, and just to respond, I think that's absolutely true. A number of these really need a lot of public engagement. I think that in talking to residents, some people feel like they should be able to do anything with their home. Others feel like, I bought in a town that has some history and I want to keep that history. And so you've got different, opinions on some of this, but I think that certainly that one about preserving smaller homes and looking at the boundaries, you'd have to engage. But we did that once before. We didn't have districts before a certain time, and then we had some rational way of deciding where the districts are. And I'm sure there were objections, and that may be why some of it looks a little gerrymandered now, but there are probably new people living there, and some of them may want their neighborhoods protected as well. So that is probably a longer term and tougher, one of these. It's certainly not a low-hanging fruit one, I think. But yeah, I think those are great thoughts. We need to engage our residents because they are entitled to certain expectations. Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. Thinking about that, public engagement is very resource intensive in terms of our staff, and we have a lot of other things where we need public engagement. So I'm a little concerned about, I would not want to put restrictions on people's rights in their homes without doing a lot of public outreach, but I don't know that we have time to do that right now. So I'm concerned about that. To me, a priority for historic preservation isn't specifically around a house size. I think there can be some very beautiful small homes that become two-story homes that fit a family now. And, I look at the fact, not just going back to me, but on my street, a lot of our homes that were built in the 1880s were 900 square feet. I challenge you to find somebody who's going to be able to pay a price in Los Gatos with the land under it and want to live in a 900 square foot house. Love my house. It had cold running water when it was built, but there were changes made over time that were necessary. So for me, a goal wouldn't be preserving small houses. It would be more preserving historic styles. And I'm more concerned about how do we set findings? How do we make sure that when somebody has to come before Historic Preservation and Planning Commission, that it's done clearly, that they understand what the restrictions are on them. The decisions are done consistently, because I hear all the time from people who feel like they're put through the ringer and somebody else got exceptions, and that they're done swiftly, because anybody coming forward who wants to remodel their home or is buying a home is already paying a mortgage and a contractor, and maybe they're living somewhere else on rent. And the more we drag things out, the more we're hurting people financially. And I've seen too many projects where it's drawn out so long that they just sell the house and they can't live here, and it leaves a very bad taste in people's mouths. So my biggest concern is that while we're trying to preserve historic preservation, we don't put more restrictions on other people. I'm concerned about expanding that and how we would do that. And I would just want to see more consistency in how findings are made and a streamlined approach to how someone who's going through historic can get guidance that's consistent but clear, and not back and forth and up and down and 5 more studies. So I don't know that I could support a lot of public outreach right now or an expansion of the historic district. I think we need to just do a better job with what we have.
Really, my attempt was to organize the information that's come before us and ask staff to take a look at these and come back to council with their ideas about how much work it would be to implement them, and whether there are some that maybe could be implemented more quickly than others, and maybe within the letter and other ideas, there are some things that we could actually get done. But I would really like to not bounce this around from committee to committee, but to see if we could ask staff to get more engaged around the organization of these, and maybe we'll decide that 1 or 3 or 5 of these are not the right ones for us to pursue at this time, but I just don't think we have that information. So that's what I would be interested in. I could turn it into a motion, but if this is a discussion item, yeah, Councilmember Rennie.
So I want to, I understand your list. I think it's missing one piece that might be worth working on, and that I heard a lot of things about making it easier for the commission to function. I think I heard findings a couple times, missing in a couple places. Those seem like maybe they're lower hanging fruit that can have an immediate effect to help the commission get through things. So I might add, I'm assuming that's lower hanging fruit, and it seems like it's something that could have effect. Some of these goals are making sure all the documents match up. I worry that that's one heck of a lot of work, but something simpler as if, and staff probably has a feel for where the commission is stumbling a little bit because they're missing findings, or maybe need something written a little clearer. Maybe there's a few of those things, but I would add a category of that sort to your list.
Yeah, and I actually think that would help a number of the items that are on the list. So, for instance, the preserving smaller homes could be much easier to do if there were better definitions and findings. So I would add that as a 6th item, which is to update and clarify the definitions and required findings for determining historic resource status and qualification for demolition or removal from the inventory, because I think that could cut across a number of the other objectives as well. So, with that, would staff like a motion on this, or this is really to come back to council on it?
Yeah, I would like a majority of council to direct us if that's the desire of the council, but I will say this in terms of discussions with regards to the items. Most of this, even the findings, would require either work or a consultant that needs to review it. You just can't develop findings without potentially doing a finding that could be deemed a taking of a private property, which is bad. I will say that in evaluating this, I will be evaluating it in the context of the strategic priority, which balanced on this strategic priority of historic neighborhoods is implementation of the housing element. And so to the extent that we're going to move and change the direction of where staff goes, it will have a direct impact on the housing element and its implementation. And so I would ask if you do direct us to look at that, we first will look at the level of effort and its implications, and not spend a phenomenal amount of time doing that, and then come back to council if that's your desire.
Councilmember Risto.
Yeah, for me, I would like the lightest look at this to just say, this is really huge, this will need a consultant, et cetera, because if I do vote for this, I don't even support all of these items. So if staff came back and said what kind of effort it would be, I would probably say, no, I don't want to back that one. So I don't want staff to do a lot of work only to find out that the majority of the council doesn't support each of those points, if that makes sense.
That being the case, are we looking at the 6 items that were just highlighted, or are we looking at the full list of 20, if that's the direction of council?
Well, in the 6 items, I've identified a map of the 20 items, and by the way, there's also 7 objectives. I've mapped those to those 5 items, so I think it incorporates the work that was done by HPC.
Okay, so I know there are objective and numbers provided for everything except the last 2, and then the 7th one, or the next one that was added?
The next one was added, yeah, there's mapping to that as well, which is number 1, number 6,
if it is the council's desire, I can take the list from the mayor with regards to that and discuss it with staff in terms of level of effort. I will say, I'm going to use it by way of example. Our last item in terms of changing our JPAs was a very significant effort. A heavy portion of that fell on the town manager himself because of the tremendous workload that falls on the town attorney and other staff. And so it's very easy when we're asked to do something and bring it forth to say yes, because there's many worthwhile items. But I have to stand up as the town manager for staff on the trade-offs that go with it. And so while historic preservation is very important, the housing element and implementation and avoiding decertification of that element is 100% more important in terms of making sure we don't fall behind. And the concern I have just looking at and knowing the workload of staff across all the different priorities and projects, we are not keeping track with that obligation, and that concerns me.
Councilmember Risto.
I have another concern, and that is in the scheme of things right now, we are also working on objective standards, or actually additional objective standards, because we already have objective standards, and we already know that a lot of projects do not have to meet these objective standards. And so this next cut that we're doing, which I have reservations about, is kind of getting the last little bits. It's the harder part to define, not just height, width, whatever. We're trying to get even more specific so we can guide what a building looks like. And so that is taking a lot of work, and it might be for naught because projects can just ignore them. So I'm concerned about how much time we're going to ask staff to do on another thing that might be important, might not. I don't know how many houses are coming forward, and I don't know what impact this will have. And if we're going to be asking staff to do a lot of work right now for something that we may not be able to implement for a year or two, does that make sense?
I think it's not an issue of whether we can do it, it's an issue of the trade-offs. And so if the council desires us to take a look at what the level of effort would be to do certain things and then to program those, the timeline associated with that, even the review may be, while it would seem easy to just take a look at all the items and come back with a list of what the level of effort is, I may wait till summer to do that so that I'm not taking staff away from the variety of things that they're doing right now that also fall to strategic priorities. So if the council is willing to not define an explicit, here's a bring it forth by December 31st or bring it forth by the end of March, and just give us a range in terms of what you're looking for, and we can see if we can work it in as a project.
I certainly am appreciative of the need to comply with the housing element and to process applications. And however, we've done zero on historic preservation for the last 20 years. We had a great start on it. And if we don't start, it's going to slip away from us. So I'm perfectly okay with even not having a date to come back with this, but I can put that in my motion as well. But I would like to try to see if we could engage staff, because I don't think we're going to get there just by turning it back as a work plan item to the committee. And so I'm ready to make a motion. Yeah, Councilmember Rennie.
So I'll just add, I'm not sure how much effort we've burnt on the, what do we just call it? No, the other work that they're doing. Yeah, objective standards. I've always worried that that's, a lot of wheel spinning to get that done. I would be perfectly happy to take that off and look at, what's the first layer to do here, because I think this, at a first level could be a lot more useful work while trying to develop those final objective standards that may be elusive. But I don't know if staff's 90% done, 80% done, or if they're 20% done. I would certainly say, let's put that work on the shelf and see if there's some beginning level of work here, because it just feels like there could be some difference made here, while the other's a lot of wheel spinning.
Yeah, I was unable to attend the objective standards workshop last week, so I don't know how far we are on that. Is that something you'd like to comment on?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So we're knee deep in the objective standards process. The workshop, or we're now terming it the open house, is actually on Thursday at 6 p.m. Feel free to RSVP, contact me if you need. We'd love to have the community come out and participate. Our consultant has been working tirelessly to move forward through the various tasks. I'd probably estimate that we're about halfway through the process, which began at the beginning of this year once we engaged the consultant.
So does that say that we have another 4 to 6 months to go?
I think it's fair, considering the competing obligations in community development right now. 6 months.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would be okay to not to disrupt that process, to let that finish before putting effort into this one. But I do think that we have some great information in front of us that's come forward from historic preservation. And so I would like to make a motion to keep it on our radar and keep it going. And so I would move to ask staff to evaluate the level of effort and the feasibility of the following items: preserving smaller homes, reviewing the boundaries of historic districts, refreshing the Bloomfield survey, considering replacement structure historically relevant, and adopting pre-1941 to 70-year rolling, and to update and clarify definitions and required findings for determining status, etc. I can give you more text on those after the meeting, and I can provide you with a mapping to the letter after the meeting. And with that work, to fit in after the objective standards have been substantially completed. Councilmember Badami.
So I'll second that, but I just want to make a comment. One of the items on here, number 16, it's revise and update acceptable substitute materials, including window replacements and siding materials. But then you go on to talk about the reason why, and that there are new materials that may be required by fire code and or insurance companies for fire safety. And as much as we advocate for wildfire prevention right now, this should just be a given, and I would think should be something that would be fairly easy and not take a lot of staff time, but would fit into our strategic priority of wildfire prevention. But I do second the motion with that comment.
Okay, thank you. Since it's going to be a little while before we hear back on this, maybe as we get closer to that, we can see whether there are other things that drive that wildfire building code activity along independently of this work. And I'm looking forward to further, work on our wildfire preparation. So I didn't think I would make a change to the motion on that basis, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay, further comments? Okay, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, and thank you so much for being willing to engage on this. And again, thank you to the Historic Preservation Committee to get the ball rolling. With that, I think that's the bottom of our agenda. And so let's go to council matters. I think maybe we could start. Councilmember Badami.
Thank you, Mayor. On November 19th, as a board member, I participated in a meeting of the Silicon Valley Animal Control Authority. On the 20th of November, I participated in a meeting of a resident wildfire advisory group. Later that evening, I attended a meeting of the DEI Commission as an observer. And on December 1st, last night, I attended a meeting of the Finance Commission as an observer by remote Zoom.
Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. Not a lot. Last Thursday, or 2 Thursdays ago, as I had mentioned, there was the Los Gatos Interfaith Thanksgiving service, which I attended and saw a lot of friends and neighbors of all religious and non-religious stripes, and it was a great way to get ready for Thanksgiving. I also went to the Live Oak Thanksgiving celebration earlier that day, where there were a lot of seniors receiving delicious Thanksgiving meal a week before Thanksgiving. I think there were a few groups that put on Thanksgiving meals, but that one was well attended. On Monday the 24th, as a member of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Finance and Administration Committee, we review some things before they go to the Board of Directors, and the main item was we were recommending to the board for our 2026 rates. We were looking at the budget coming forward and looking at our rates to have a 1% discount over what PG&E charges going into the year and a $12 bill credit for low-income customers. So we'll see how that works out. And I think that's about it. I met with the North 40 developers, and I've met with a few residents about traffic calming and speed calming in town. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I was able to attend the interfaith reception, but not the service. I attended a meeting with El Camino Hospital and some folks that are involved in that. I forget what the credential is called, but they have the highest sort of accreditation for their nurses, and so I got the chance to participate in providing my perspective of El Camino in Los Gatos. Feel very grateful to have such a great community hospital in our town. I attended the second go at Muse Markets in Los Gatos, which is a really cool event. I've gotten to know the organizers, and for those that haven't heard about this is now the second time this year. This makers market of sort of creatives and artists has come to town, and they are, I think it's not confirmed, but they're planning starting in the spring of next year on doing one of these once a month through the end of 2026. And I'll just say the organizer commented on how much she enjoyed working with our events team. And so a shout out to Jessica and Monica. I attended a meeting of the Finance Commission, and I have had lots and lots of meetings.
Councilmember Rennie.
The only thing I have to report is I attended the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Risk Oversight Committee yesterday. Nothing from that to report.
Okay. Relatively light meetings this week. The last 2 weeks, I met with some of the neighbors of the Twin Oaks development on the 19th. I observed the DEI Commission on the 20th. And then I participated with a couple of meetings on the community center group. And then I participated in a couple of conversations with Silicon Valley Clean Energy and Barry Cinnamon, who's a resident and has a substantial solar business in town, about a potential pilot for electric vehicle charging, and then participated in the West Valley Mayors and Managers meeting, which was really terrific. I really enjoyed getting together with that group. And then, let's see, this week, again, Los Gatos Thrives Foundation meeting, and that's it. So with that, Town Manager.
No report tonight.
Okay, Town Attorney.
The town council started in closed session and will be adjourning to closed session, as you know, and I'll return here to report out after that.
Okay, thank you. So this meeting is adjourned, and we will start closed session in 5 minutes. Thank you.